Have you ever wondered why some people actively seek out blood, violence, and gruesome videos, not as a joke, not accidentally, but on purpose? And no, watching this content won't magically turn you into a serial killer, probably. But your brain is reacting in ways you might not expect. What if I told you there's a real scientific explanation, and it's all rooted in how the human brain works? Today, we're exploring one of the most controversial and misunderstood corners of human psychology: why some people are fascinated by extreme violence and gore. This isn't about judgment, it's about understanding what's happening inside the brain when someone chooses to watch the darkest parts of human existence. One of the strongest psychological drivers behind watching gruesome content is something called morbid curiosity. That's a scientific term for the instinctive desire to look at things that are disturbing, shocking, or threatening, even though we know they might make us uncomfortable. Research shows that people will choose to view images of harm or violence, even when given the option not to, and that this choice lights up the brain's reward circuitry. The same systems that activate when we learn new, positive information. In fact, studies using brain scans show this curiosity engages parts of the brain linked to information value, not pleasure itself. This means that for some people, the drive to know what happens can be more powerful than the disgust or fear caused by the content itself. Another reason people are drawn to extreme content is physiological arousal, the excitement and adrenaline that comes from watching something intense or taboo. Just like a roller coaster triggers a rush without real danger, seeing graphic scenes can spike your nervous system, increasing your heart rate and releasing chemicals like adrenaline and dopamine. This creates a kind of safe thrill where the brain gets an intense emotional reaction without actual risk. For some individuals, that rush becomes something their brain starts to anticipate, almost like a drug. Interestingly, research suggests that people aren't drawn to violence just because it's shocking. They often expect it to be meaningful or informative. People might think watching real violence helps them understand danger, human behavior, or the world itself on a deeper level. For some, it's a kind of truth-seeking. A violent scene might promise insight into human conflict, survival, or morality, things most of us rarely experience firsthand. This explains why morbid content can feel strangely informative rather than just disturbing. But there's a flip side: desensitization. Repeated exposure to intense visual violence can dull emotional reactions over time, not just to gore, but to real suffering too. This doesn't happen to everyone, but for frequent viewers, the brain starts responding less strongly to violent stimuli. What was once shocking becomes just another clip on a screen. This effect can reduce empathy and make real-life violence seem more normal in the mind of the viewer, which is one reason psychologists warn about overexposure. You might have heard claims that consuming violent or gore content causes people to become violent, even serial killers. But scientific research is very cautious about this. Studies on violent media do show some association with aggressive thoughts or desensitization, especially in children with long-term exposure to violent content. Some studies find that exposure to violent content can increase aggressive feelings or make the brain less reactive to violence over time, a process called desensitization. However, interest in real crime content, like stories about serial killers, is often driven by cognitive curiosity and emotional exploration, not a desire to commit violence. People say they watch to understand motives and context, not to imitate the crimes. Not everyone who watches violent or extreme content is the same. Some psychologists believe factors like personality traits, past experiences, tolerance for fear, and sensation-seeking all play a role. A person who loves high-intensity stimuli, whether that's horror movies, extreme sports, or graphic footage, may seek out stronger content because their baseline arousal levels need more stimulation. Meanwhile, others may watch for context, learning, curiosity, or even empathy toward victims. In short, it's not one simple cause. It's a mix of curiosity, thrill-seeking, emotional response, and personal history. So, what does this all mean? The human brain is complex, and when it comes to extreme violence and gore, the reasons people watch aren't just weird or wrong. They're rooted in real psychological processes like curiosity, arousal, and meaning-making. But it's important to be mindful. Frequent exposure can change how your brain responds over time.